thank you everyone for joining us today on our Next Practices live webinar. As we all know, well, the pandemic has affected our organizations in many different ways, I would say. The interesting point about this is, we've been wondering, has the pandemic actually revealed some type of problem or problems that we didn't know about our organization? And what are we doing about those problems? Are we trying to jump into solutions right now? Are we thinking that we're going to wait for things to go back to the new normal so that we can address those? And well, we thought that leading change in a time of pandemic is definitely a very interesting topic to address. For that reason, we are very, very happy to have two very successful professionals and who are also PURC alumni and friends joining us today and to discuss this topic with us all. Peter Twesigye is a member of PURC's faculty, as you very well, many of you know, I'm sure, of our 2-week program that we offer in January and June. And also, of course, Peter works in strategic planning, regulation, tariff policy, and organizational development at Umeme Inc. In Uganda. And Donnette Henry is the business planning and research manager at the NWC in Jamaica, the National Water Corporation in Jamaica, which is a primary water and sanitation service provider for Jamaica. She's been there for quite some time now and works in corporate planning, performance monitoring, regulatory relations, and policy and procedural systems development. So thank you both very, very much for joining us today. We're so thrilled that you're able to be with us and share your thoughts, share about what you've learned during this pandemic and how the pandemic has affected your organization. As Sam very well described, I have a number of questions that I'd love to ask you, and we'll try and devote about 20 minutes of our first part of the webinar. For about 20 minutes, we'll be asking those questions. And then after that, I will try and be as good as possible and of course, allow as much time as we can to the audience, because we also want to hear from you also. Make sure you write those questions on the chat feature, and maybe later on we can also ask you to use the voice system so that you can ask your questions live as well. So I was hoping that maybe Peter could start by telling us a little bit about how your company has responded to COVID-19. Is that we'd love to hear a little bit about what has happened and how your company has responded to COVID-19, to the pandemic, and of course we'd love to hear about Donnette afterwards too on that.
Thank you, Rosary. To the viewers out there, how are you? And hope you're doing well. Different time zones. Straight to the question. The pandemic happened at a time when no one actually had anticipated its impact to this extent. As managers, as leaders in these institutions, our mandate has been primarily one, emphasizing and maintaining reliability of supply has been one of the critical issues we've had to deal with, and make sure that all health centers, all hospitals have reliable supply. In effect, the pandemic has demonstrated the critical role that the energy sector plays in this the health space, powering ventilators, powering ICUs, powering cold chains for vaccines. Really, the importance can't be emphasized anymore. Apart from the reliability aspect of it, the other issue has been ensuring that we extend prepaid credit to health centers for utilities that use prepaid metering technology. It's important to ensure that power is on 24/7 to have these machines, equipment running. So in addition to reliability, extending credit, making sure that the utilities, the health centers are not disconnected is critical to the services that they are offering. The health sector is providing to these to the patients around the world. Thirdly, the engagements within the communities in terms of safety. You play a critical role in emphasizing the safety of the consumers, because you have a dead, if you have your consumers dead, then you're out of business. So you have play a supplementary role in supporting the sensitization campaigns around safety and keeping the masses healthy. And of course, internally as a company, then you have to migrate most of the work to offline, a kind of offline model of doing business. So those are primarily some of the 4 areas I've mentioned that we've tried to respond to the pandemic. We've done and tried to respond to the pandemic.
Thank you, Peter. Donnette, do you mind sharing what's happened at the national, your organization? I'll call it the corporation. It's actually called the Commission.
Yes, it is.
About that. The C, I was looking at the acronym.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. Well, hello, everyone. Morning from Jamaica. First off, I need to mention that the NWC, National Water Commission, is a government-owned entity. And as such, also given the critical nature of water and sanitation to managing this pandemic, from the get-go, NWC has been a part of what is our National Disaster and Emergency Response Team. Now, those of us from the Caribbean would be familiar with our hurricanes and, well, primarily hurricanes. So most of us, we do have a National Disaster Response Committee, and it's chaired by our Prime Minister, and NWC is a part of that committee. So a lot of what we have done is also in support of the government's own initiative in responding to the crisis. As an institution or as an entity, our primary responsibility or primary response would have been ensuring that the quality of service that we provide our customers is not compromised. So our customers have supply, constant supply of water. That in itself comes with its own challenges, and I guess we'll deal with that a little bit later on. But we are also in a drought period. So it's ensuring that where we're not able to supply through the network, the pipe system, we are able to supply through trucking primarily. Also, we need to ensure that, and in doing that, we need to ensure that our staff, our team members are able to be able to deliver, provide that service without being at risk. So we have to put in the relevant safety measures for our staff in ensuring the delivery of the service. Earlier on also, we took the decision not to disconnect our customers for non-payment. Again, given the critical nature of water and sanitation to navigating or fighting, preventing the spread of the pandemic, we have taken that decision. We've also have to depend extensively on technology. So we had to move some of our employees to working from home. So we have been able to do that by facilitating our team members with the relevant equipment to do so. To some extent, we have had to carry out meter reading remotely where that system is in place. We have also moved a lot of our customer contact services online. So our bill payment, dealing with customer queries, and we have available our web chats. And also we engaged our regulators earlier to address some of the issues as it relates to regulatory requirements or standards that we would have agreed to request moratorium, and they have worked with us in that regard. So that's primarily how we have been responding to the pandemic so far.
Excellent. Thank you both for sharing that. I'll be curious to also hear about what have been the largest, the biggest challenges that your organizations have faced at this point in regards to the pandemic. If that's okay with you, maybe Donnette can start answering that question. And of course, I'd love to hear from Peter as well.
Well, sure. I think one of the biggest would have been the impact on our cash flow and our revenues. Now, we, as a country, we depend a lot on tourism. And so a large number of our major suppliers, customers would have been the hoteliers. So with the closure of all hotels at the start, and we're just beginning the reopening process. And also with the fallout in closing of the commercial activity, downturn in commercial activity. So the largest hit would have been our cash flow and our revenues. And to kind of put it into perspective for you, within the first month, with just looking at the hotelier, the tourism sector, we would have seen a downturn in revenue of over 400 million. So we are looking at a shortfall or roughly 35 to 40% in revenues from the commercial activities. We would have seen also the reduction in our collections. We have taken the decision not to disconnect. So there would be that aspect of it because there's no penalty associated with not paying your bill. But then the reality is the economic downturn. You have persons losing jobs, you have businesses being closed, small businesses being closed especially. So it's kind of twofold. So the biggest impact we would see would be that of or fall off or the challenges with cash flow. Again, I mentioned we are operating within the dry season. So we have a drought on and we would have increased demands in terms of our residential customers. You have more persons at home. So it's been able to ensure that we are able to deliver the service. And if it's not through a regular system, then we have to ensure trucking. Again, the cost associated with that. So yeah, we have also the decline in our capital program. We'd have to put a halt on some of the projects that would have been going on. But yeah, those are the major challenges.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Going through.
No doubt about
it is. Yeah. But we have been going on, and that's the good thing about it. We have been able to hold on and deliver the service without compromising it, and also maintaining our quality. And I guess that's the important thing right now.
That's great news. That is great news indeed. How about you, Peter? So what would you say are the biggest challenges that your organization has faced?
Yeah, sorry. So number one has been a distortion of the supply chain for the company. I must say Uganda is again landlocked in nature, so we import most of the electric equipment from abroad. With the pandemic and the lockdown of factories, mainly in China and Europe, the whole supply chain has been distorted and had a lot of constraints in terms of sourcing for materials through Capex execution and even operation and maintenance works. The second itself is the Capex delivery delays. That means inability to get the equipment, you're unable to deliver on the contracted Capex projects, which comes with financial commitments and obligations that you have to meet, the penalties and fees. That's the other one that has come through. The third one is, of course, that the pandemic is threatening the business models that we are running. This is a generalizable observation, not only to Uganda, but across the continent, or even across the world, business models, especially grid-connected supply business models, are all threatened. The company sales have tanked, have declined by 20 to 30% reductions. So that calls for a review on this, of the sustainability of whether we need to maintain the current business models or we need to rethink on innovative ways to counteract the pandemic. Of course, on the lower side, we have a population that's is limited in terms of what they can do at home. They're not working. Their sources of revenues or incomes are limited, and they've been tempted to engage in power theft. So the power losses are growing and increasing. And I know that's something that's happening across utilities as people, or homesteads and industries, everyone is trying to survive. So it's a big challenge. Its impacts on the company's revenue base. Yes, so while we may have the long-term Capex orientation commitments being not so threatened, but the short-term impacts are visible, and they are negatively having multiplier effects on the balance sheets of the company. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts on that. And I have still some additional questions, of course, and I'm just looking at the time, and I'm thinking about possibly combining a couple of thoughts that I had. So one of them is, you know, what has this pandemic helped you learn about your organization, about your companies, that you might wish to change? So based on what you've learned, what changes are you considering making to your companies based on what you've learned? And are you thinking about making those changes like right now during this time, or are you like kind of holding off for a bit until you see what happens next and then act? So what have you learned, and what changes are you making in your companies based of your learning experience, and when are you thinking about making any changes?
Sorry to just jump in on that. In our case, I think we've had this has been more of an adaptive problem that we are trying to find adaptive solutions to it. So first of all is to
sounds familiar, Peter.
Yeah, okay. So we've moved ahead and tried to source for some of the materials that are manufactured locally and fill the gap. So reliance on local products for OPEX and CAPEX, even when they are not adequate, but we'll still try to now rely on the local manufacturing capacity to make sure services continue in working. We've set up a robust communication and feedback mechanism with our customers, because we need to keep in touch and we need to ensure they're getting the same level of service they expect from a utility. So we've invested a lot in communication through social media and like before. Of course, that feeds into the critical role that the telecom industry does in line with the energy sector. The two are in sync and have been working in support of each other. The other one has been really staff rationalization in terms of deploying the most critical staff that you need in the field, and those that you think can be put on standby, or they have as few people in the field or in offices as much as possible.
Yeah. To prevent risk, right?
Yeah, of course, talk about prevention of risk and exposure.
Yeah. So Donnette, how about you? What have you learned about your organization in this process, and what changes are you maybe considering?
Okay. The response is a bit twofold also with this. What have we learned? The importance and our complete reliance on technology You know, there are things that we would have taken for granted. It impacts the policies and primarily some of the procedures, how we would operate, how we'd go about engaging with our staff, for example. So communication would be key, not only with our stakeholders, our customers and our regulators and the others, but also with our employees, because this is a trying time. It's a stressful time. And to just give an idea in terms of the dependence on technology, a few years ago, we needed to engage our staff. So we decided to be having one-on-one meetings in different areas. Now I know Jamaica is an island, but actually navigating and trying to bring together over 2,000 persons, it can be logistically challenging and also costly. But at the height of the pandemic, when we needed to be able to communicate, give the reassurance, say what is happening, how we're going to go about doing things, we're able to use this platform for an electronic platform to engage with our team members, to give the assurance, have the feedback. So certainly one of the things we would have learned is our reliance on technology. It would also have revealed some deficiencies, and we have had to move to ensure that we can shore up or increase the robustness of the communication, technology and communication network. Also, we would have had to look at our own disaster response and business continuity policies. While we would have been targeting things like our hurricanes or earthquake, fire. Who plans for a pandemic? You know, right. And there are implications there. So how exactly do we respond? Now, we have relied a lot in terms of the guidelines that would have been put out, for example, by the Ministry of Health, which have done a tremendous job in managing and providing leadership with this. So we have seen where the protocols and the guidelines that have been put out by the Ministry of Health, when we looked at probably some of our own policies, they may have been a bit lacking. So now, yes, we're a government entity, but we're also a self-sustaining entity. So we need to ensure that we have our own systems and policies and procedures in place that will help us to navigate this period. So those are some of the changes that we have to look at. You mentioned whether or not we would make some of the changes now or later. Certainly, there are things that we are doing now. We've seen where they would have worked, but my mom always say you never make decisions when you're too happy or too sad. Likewise, we could say, yes, you know, some of the worst decisions we make are when we are being one of two extremes. But in this case, we have seen where we put things in place and they have worked well. So it would make sense that we assess and see if we continue. Likewise, there are other things that we can't necessarily address right now because these have to be informed with data. So we see how it impacts our revenues and the group of the category of customers, how it impacted various customers. So there may be implications for our tariff and how our tariff is structured. Again, we need data, so it's not something that you can just dive in and make changes, plus we're regulated. I mentioned we are self-financing, so although we're government-owned, we've had to be providing support to the government initiatives. And so the question of social water, who pays? It costs. There's a cost associated with producing water. How, as a self-financing entity, how will we be compensated for that? So are we going to be looking at subsidies? Are we going to be looking at tariffs? Are we going to be looking at the welfare issues? So these are some of the further along changes that we have to consider, but we need to ensure that we have the data to inform whatever it is that we're going to be doing. And I think that would be key. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for sharing. Absolutely. That is a lot.
It is.
So I do have some more questions, and in fact, I haven't had an opportunity to look at the chat very carefully yet. So if you do have questions for our guest speakers today, please go ahead and put them on the chat so that we can go ahead and ask. But in the meantime, I'd like to ask one more quick question. I know we're still in the middle of this. Some places may be a little bit more advanced than others, but I'd like to know what you are most proud of, or what you've done during the pandemic. What have you and your colleagues done that you're most proud of? Like, kind of beginning to look back in time now. Either one of you, Peter, maybe, would you like to let us know your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I think a number of them come to mind. Number one being that we've been able to keep the lights on, which is really critical. Reliability, keeping the lights on and reliability in excellent shape. Two, that we've had minimal, actually we've not had any positive cases within the utility staff. So that's a great, it's a great achievement for the company that with over 1,500 staff, you don't have anyone who has been diagnosed with the corona. I think that's another success point to mention. The third one is that we've managed to keep staff committed and very hopeful in times when the situation has been depressing and a bit uncertain, but at least we've given guarantees and assurances that everyone will get paid, which is what they up to do, really. We've seen businesses collapse within the last 3 months. People have lost jobs. So many people have become unemployed in a short space of time. So I think giving assurances that we can still be able to pay our staff is another great achievement that we are proud of. So we are not contributing to the unemployment numbers in the country. Yeah. The other one is that we've been able to keep the financials of the company relatively strong and still retain investor confidence in the company. And we're hopeful that we can still mobilize and attract foreign capital financing for the huge Capex works and the huge business that we are running. Then, of course, lastly, the issue of a robust crisis management and communication strategy that we have come up with in a space of a few months that we had not thought through in detail, as we've come to realize that we need to think through some of these things. So I think those are the major points that we've had and proud of in the short time.
Thank you, Peter. Those are definitely things to be proud of. How about you, Donnette, and your company?
Similar, actually. In spite of the challenges, we have been able to provide our customers, and not only our customers, the general citizenry, with quality potable water. So we're very proud of that. Also, in doing that, we did so in partnership with some of the municipal agencies and other government agencies, and ensuring that persons who aren't our customers are provided with quality with the water. And of course, our team members. The dedication and resilience that has been shown in ensuring that we, especially the team in operations in the field, to show up always and just ensure to keep the business going, and not just keeping the business going, but recognizing the importance of what it is that we do, and to do so constantly maybe putting themselves at risk also because of the nature of the disease. And so we're very proud of our team members. For example, when I mentioned the cash flow issues that we would have been having, there are some retroactive payments, for example, that would have been due, and recognizing the issues, and now you have to prioritize somewhat who pays. Now, we have been able to pay our staff, we have been able to pay our major suppliers, but also as an employee to say, okay, guess what? We understand we can defer, we'll take part payment now and another, the balance some other time. And it brings to the fore one of our core values, which is teamwork. And certainly throughout this pandemic, we have seen that in terms of the quality of staff that we have, or the team members that we have. Also, we were in the midst or at the start of implementing two major systems, or financial system. And we were able to continue doing so without any major disruptions. So these are some of the things that we are extremely proud of. Just being able to deliver what it is that we have been mandated to do, having our staff in place, supporting and going all out, and just keeping the business running, keeping the business going.
Excellent. That sounds like a lot to be proud of. Good.
Yes.
Good for you all. Good for you all. Yeah, we get tested in difficult times, but we can come ahead as well. So that's excellent. Thank you for sharing all those thoughts with us. I would like to go ahead and take some questions from the chat, if that's okay with you. And I'd like to start with one question from our friend in Argentina, Alejo Molinari, who is asking the following: what about implementing small Capex projects to help the economy gain momentum when the lockdown is about to decrease? So either one of you would like to share your thoughts on that. I can read the question again. So what about implementing small Capex projects to help the economy gain momentum when the lockdown is, going to decrease?
Yes, the key word there I've read is small Capex. So discussion to the small Capex. Yeah, true. We've continued, like I said, we've continued to invest in reliability of supply, and that means not only targeting health centers or hospitals alone, but also the large industrial customers, industrial consumers, who are the big drivers of the economy. So a great deal amount of money has been invested in maintaining reliable supply to the industrial sector, manufacturing sector, as well as the medium scale industries. These are the real big drivers of the economy. Of course, once you have reliability in those sectors robust, then you can count on the economy to revive when the pandemic is done. Yeah.
Also, again, Peter mentioned the keyword being small Capex projects. In essence, we hadn't really stopped completely some of those because we've had to continue to some extent with some of the smaller projects. And certainly once the economy opens up, and we have started the reopening process, these will increase. So yes, that is part of the strategy.
Excellent. So I do have other questions that have been sent to me through the chat privately. So I'd like to go ahead and ask that. So the question says, what systems are you setting up so that you can evaluate the decisions and changes that you have made during the pandemic? So what systems are you setting up so that you can evaluate the decisions and changes that you have made during the pandemic? If you'd like to,
I'll dive right in this time. Well, we have started probably about a month or 6 weeks ago. We've actually established a committee that is comprised primarily of some of the executives, and doing just that, looking at the systems that were put in place, how effective they were, how it is that we're going to go forward, what will be the new normal. I hate cliches, by the way, but that seems an appropriate one. What is, how do we look when we come out of this? What are the things that we're gonna keep? What are the things that we certainly need to change? What's the time frame? What's the possible costs that are associated with that? So we have actually started a process by having a small committee comprising executives that are looking at that, and then the output will certainly inform how we go ahead, how we proceed. So that's one way.
Very good, thank you. Would you like to comment on that question, Peter?
Yeah, so in the energy sector, I think we have had, at the policy level, we've had a joint pandemic task force that brings together all the key players in the energy sector as well as the health sector. And this is where decisions are being made with legal minds in the room to advise on what actually needs to be done within the prevailing laws and what laws need to be amended to allow for certain activities to be done. So that protects and ensures that companies don't violate their existing, contractual laws, or concessions and licenses with the regulator. They are safeguarded from any possible future legal suits. So that's one mechanism that is being jointly done with frequent meetings that are signed off by all the stakeholders. So it's a robust mechanism of gaining concurrence and consent of all the institutions that are involved. At the utility level, we've invested more in data analytics, really to inform decision making, looking at load profiles changes and consumption patterns changes to inform decisions that management thinks can take, but based on data that is empirical in nature. And of course, the rest falls within the existing policies and manuals. The Human Resource Manual provides for health and safety guidelines component and how to treat staff during this period. So those are adequate enough to look at.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that as well. I have some other question here that it's the following. It says, the pandemic presents unique leadership challenges. How would you like your company to use, how would you like your company use these to develop the next generation of leaders? How would you like for your company to use these to develop the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Very much of an interesting question.
I don't have the correct answer, but what I can say is that the pandemic has really given a platform for born leaders to come up and shine, proposing innovative avenues or innovative approaches on what needs to be done within individual utilities or within policy making groups that have been formed within this period. Of course, one of them being able to lead a group that can continuously work with limited resources, working remotely from home in places with not so robust internet connections, but you still have to get work going leading teams in the field, making sure you have reliable supply to the critical installations like hospitals, and at the same time maintain zero infection rates. I think that shows some level of leadership for the future generations. Thank you.
There you go. Excellent. Would you like to comment on that, Donnette?
Yes. And it's really in support of what Peter would have said. The level of innovativeness that would be required as a leader, being able to balance the management of the business and dealing with the business issue, and of course being able to balance the people side of it and the concerns of the team members, and being able to have everyone coexist or rally around a common cause. So that's my 2 cents in addition to Peter's dollar.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. So we did have another question from Alejo as well, right now, that I will go ahead and ask quickly. It says, during pandemic, political authorities understand the close next between water and health. We have to take that as an advantage to assure future public support to give water for all, improve quality, and decrease water leaks, among other eventual needs. So I guess it's more a comment than a question, but I wanted to go ahead and read it out loud. I'm not sure if any of you would like to quickly comment on it. Otherwise, I'll ask Sam to see if we have anybody who would like to ask any questions, if there's any raised hands to ask questions. Okay.
Hey, Araceli, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you so much. So yeah, so I just sent everyone a message in the chat. So in order to share, this is a time where we would love for our participants to share with us or follow up with any additional questions to our speakers. So in order to do so, if you're using a laptop or a desktop, you would go to the bottom of the Zoom toolbar and you'll see the participant tab. There you can select the hand raising icon, which will prompt me that you would like to share with our speakers or follow up with any additional questions. If you're using a cell phone or a tablet, that toolbar and the participant tab with the hand icon will be at the top of your Zoom screen. So as of right now, I don't see any hands raised just yet, Araceli, but I will definitely keep an eye on anything. Don't be shy, everyone.
Yeah, they're getting shy on us now. So that's all right. I mean, I do have some other questions I'd like to ask. I just don't want to take over. So is it still the case we don't have any hands raised?
Yes, as of right now, there are no hands raised.
Okay, well, I'd like to go ahead and ask both Peter and Donnette if they can let us know, you know, kind of like looking back, what would you have done differently?
Dive right in.
I take it that Peter's going first.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's fine. Anyway.
Yeah, I think looking back, we could have done more of the local procurements. We've not previously taken advantage of the local resources, local manufacturing resources seriously, as we should have done. And now some of these manufacturers have actually demonstrated the capability to manufacture good quality products, cables, conductors, transformers, meters as well. I think there is going to be a shift even when the pandemic ends, that we give greater consideration to the local manufacturers of critical equipment that we use. The other one is that probably we could have done a more robust risk management plan earlier, but like they say, no one expected the pandemic. We thought everything was in control, but you never know when the the worst day can come. But yes, we had a risk management plan, though we didn't have one that was as robust as necessary to have been to counter the corona pandemic. Uganda was lucky in a sense that the infection rates were not so high, and up to now they are still very few. But nonetheless, we have so many countries around Africa that have also registered high numbers of infections, which I think the message would benefit that having a robust risk plan all the time is a critical necessity. Of course, then lastly, having robust utilities, and I mean maintaining the financial viability of utilities is a necessity. We have been one of the 3 financially viable utilities in Africa, only 3, and we've managed to maintain that over the period. I think that gives some confidence to our shareholders, our investors, and the public that we are running a credible business, and that is that's a great plus that we. I'm not going to say that we could have done differently, but I think we have managed to maintain, and if we survive this, then we'll be on top of the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do to some extent share Peter's thought in terms, and I would have mentioned it earlier, in terms of the level of responsiveness as it relates to having in place a plan, that a risk management plan, or in our case, a disaster management plan, and then the aside to it being the business continuity plan that we could have moved with quickly. So certainly that is something we would have hoped to have done differently, and that's why it's something that we are looking at now. Some of the decisions that we have made, probably when we did full closure of our commercial offices, when maybe we could have done reduced hours. And I say this to some extent because, again, while we had increased our engagement with our customers using social media, regular media, kind of guiding our customers through the virtual aspect where we had been put more or less directing them. I think we could have done a little bit differently. Yeah, that's what I can think of right now.
If nothing else, this has definitely been a learning process for so
It
many.
It is. I think one of the things we can certainly agree on is will not come out of this unchanged. We cannot go back to what it is that we were doing before. We really, as utilities, as operators, service providers, we need to look at, just how it is that we have been able to navigate. What are the things that we didn't get right? What are the things that we did? And we need to be able to move on from this and not resort back to some of the ways, because I don't think we can actually survive or go through doing a lot of the things how we were doing them before. Mm-hmm. And that's for business and personal also,
Yeah, it's been an adjustment for sure for everybody.
Yes, it has been.
Yeah.
I think in addition to that, really, I think the pandemic has brought forward the need for organizations, this is a general statement, for organizations everywhere, utilities, all service types, to invest in technology.
Yes.
Investment in technology really becomes difficult to run services for the consumer. So, some utilities, not necessarily in Uganda, the utilities have often given IT departments very meager budgets, or even very little budgets. But now everyone realizes that if you hadn't invested in IT, then there's no way to have your staff working remotely from home.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think the message is that investments in IT are becoming very critical and necessary.
And I certainly endorse that, Peter, because it's one of our major takeaway from all of this. Also, we had plans to carry out improvements in our infrastructure, modernizing and improving, and we've had to. What COVID did was force us to bring those forward in terms of we could not have negotiated or navigated this period without a fairly decent IT infrastructure, and we must invest in it. And it's twofold really, because yes, it's allowing us to keep the business going, but there are also savings that could come from it. So for example, something as simple as how it is that we go about providing training. So I'm going to be doing training around the island. So that would take costs in terms of your traveling and accommodations and a lot of other things that come into play. Yet we have been able to conduct training with persons from across the island. So there are savings that is available through these investments. It's not just about, it can't be like before where IT is a second thought. It has to be the major driver now, I think, going forward. So that is certainly one of our major takeaway as it relates to how we do business.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing that with us too. Sam, do we have any raised hands? Otherwise, I would like to ask one more question. But
sure. Yeah, no, as of right now, I don't see any hands raised yet. So please continue.
All right. So just touching on this whole idea of change and what we've learned and how we're moving forward. One of the things that has, that we all know, I think, is that presenting new ideas, being innovative, can be risky, right? So would you say that this pandemic may have taught us something about that, something about taking risk, something about innovation, and how can you help the people that come up with these ideas so that they continue to be creative and maybe offer options for us to explore moving forward?
Thank you. I think innovation really for future leaders is something that should be central to any organization, any business, and not treated in the peripheral. That said, I think any member of the organization who comes with an innovative idea around managing risk, managing or introducing a new business process, needs to be given room to innovate and make errors. And then, of course, it is through making errors that you get to discover novel processes or working technologies or policies. It is, of course, as leaders, as leaders, you have to be ready to take risks cautiously. But on the other side, I think it's given the pandemic and the way it happened, it would give room or give some level of tolerance to say, okay, we were trying out something in circumstances we were not prepared for. So it worked, well and good. If it didn't work, we'll improve and look forward to having a better result next time.
And it's important also that we create the environment where persons are willing and are able to put forth their ideas. Sometimes we think that ideas reside in one set or one grouping, but we have to create that environment where persons are willing and able to share those ideas, and where there's value in it, certainly we try it. There are a lot of times where we may be looking on something, but it's really the person who is doing that can tell you the better ways. Yes, you do so with some amount of caution, but certainly we have to have that environment in which persons are able and are willing and are encouraged to put forth their ideas and participate more in the decision making of what is happening. Exactly. And how we can best deal with issues.
Now that is very much the essence of Next Practices, which is precisely why we like to call this series that, because this is all about trying, it's all about experimenting, it's all about learning what we can from the experiment and always keep improving. So it's not so much about best practices, it's about what we can try next that we haven't tested, that we haven't tried before, and what can we learn from it. So thank you both very, very much. This has been super enlightening to me. I've loved interacting with you and hearing all the experiences that you've gone through and what you've learned from this whole process so far.